She stopped for gas. 10 minutes later, she was cuffed on the ground, her son's phone smashed, and her name erased. What they didn't know, her brother was Delta Force. And now, justice had a new target. This story will leave you breathless. The dashboard clock blinked 11:42 p.m. when Naomi Carter steered her silver 2015 Honda Civic into the Fuel Zone 24 gas station off the main road in Halston, Georgia. The car eased to a stop beside pump number 3, its once bright paint now dulled by time and mileage. In the passenger seat, her 13-year-old son, Malik, stirred awake after a long day waiting for his mom to finish her shift at St. Halston Memorial Hospital. "Are you hungry?" Naomi asked softly, glancing at the boy through the rear-view mirror. Malik rubbed his eyes. "Yeah, can I grab something to eat?" Naomi nodded gently. "Just one thing, okay? Then we're heading straight home. I've got a morning shift." The fluorescent lights of the convenience store cast a pale glow over Naomi's tired face. Her blue hospital scrub top, wrinkled and still faintly smelling of rubbing alcohol, clung to her shoulders. She stepped out of the car to pump gas, eyes following Malik as he walked toward the store, her old debit card in his hand. Then came the screech of tires, slicing through the quiet night like a blade. 2 police cruisers tore into the parking lot, red and blue lights flashing wildly, reflecting off windows, gas pumps, and Naomi's rear-view mirror. Her body froze. She had done nothing wrong, but her instinct screamed. That chilling, familiar sense of danger slithered up her spine. 2 white officers jumped out, one tall and broad-shouldered with a buzz cut. The name Officer Travis Knox gleamed from his chest. The other, shorter and stockier, with a cold, round face, Officer Sean Becker. Both had hands hovering over their holstered weapons as they moved toward her like they were approaching a threat. "Step away from the vehicle. Hands where we can see them." Knox barked. "What's going on?" Naomi asked, her voice trembling but steady, the kind of composure only years as a nurse could teach. "Your car matches a description from a robbery tonight." Knox snapped, flashlights sweeping over the interior. "And judging by your appearance, we got reason to suspect possession of narcotics." Naomi stood still, stunned. "What?" "This is my car. I have all my papers. I just got off work at the hospital." "Shut up. Step away from a vehicle. Now." Knox barked louder, his grip tightening on the cold steel of his handcuffs. Just then, Malik stepped out of the store, still clutching a bag of chips and a soda. The sight stopped him in his tracks. "Mom, I'm okay, baby." Naomi tried to stay calm. "It's just a misunderstanding. Sit on the ground, hands behind your back." Knox roared, and without waiting for her compliance, he grabbed her arm and forced it behind her, locking the cuffs with a harsh metallic click that echoed through the night. Her phone tumbled from her pocket, smacking the concrete. "Don't touch my mom," Malik shouted, raising his phone to record the scene. "No filming." Becker lunged toward him. "That's obstruction of justice." Naomi, still forced to her knees beside the car, could feel the burning in her joints and the sharp sting of the handcuffs digging into her wrists. "Baby, don't be afraid," she whispered, her voice filled with tears, but it didn't break. It wasn't weakness. It was the voice of a mother, a nurse, a citizen, being treated like an enemy. Her only crime was pumping gas in the wrong place, with the wrong color skin. Naomi knelt on the cold concrete of Fuel Zone 24, hands cuffed tightly behind her back, wrists throbbing from the pressure. Nearby, Malik stood frozen, eyes wide, phone in hand, recording it all. No filming. Officer Knox barked, storming over and ripping the phone from Malik's hands. "That's my phone." Malik protested, but Knox smashed the device to the ground, shattering it. "We told you no filming." Knox growled, his glare full of hostility. Naomi tried to steady her voice. "Please, he's just a child. Let him be." Officer Sean Becker, standing nearby, scoffed. "A child? We've seen plenty of children like him." Knox turned back, grabbing Naomi's arm and jerking her up roughly. "Who do you think you are, standing up to the police?" Naomi stumbled, struggling to keep her balance. "I'm not resisting. I just want to know why I'm being arrested." Becker stepped close, leaning in to whisper in her ear, "You should know your place." Malik, watching everything, shouted, "Don't hurt my mom." Knox turned and started toward Malik, but Naomi cried out, "Please, don't touch my son." Becker held Naomi back as Knox locked eyes with Malik. "You better learn your place, kid." A bystander, having witnessed everything, raised their phone and began recording. Knox noticed and marched toward him, snapping, "You better put that phone away if you know what's good for you." The bystander backed up but kept the phone in hand, still filming. Naomi, now being dragged toward the squad car, looked back at Malik, her eyes wide with fear and urgency. "Baby, go home and call Uncle Damien. Tell him Mom needs help." Malik nodded, tears streaking down his cheeks. "I'll do it right now, Mom. I promise." The door slammed shut behind Naomi as she was shoved into the back of the cruiser. Through the window, she saw Malik standing there, small, alone, beneath the glow of a flickering streetlight, under the cold fluorescent lights of the interrogation room. Naomi Carter sat motionless, her wrists still cuffed tightly to the steel bar of the table. Her eyes were red, not just from the pain of Travis Knox's blow, but from the humiliation she had just endured, right in front of her own son. She remembered every second, every detail like a blade carving slowly into her memory. Just hours earlier, at Fuel Zone 24, she'd been filling her gas tank when two white officers swarmed the scene. No greeting, no questions. They yanked her out of her car like a fugitive, just as her 13-year-old son, Malik Carter, was walking back from the convenience store holding a bag of chips. When Naomi tried to speak, asking why she was being detained, Knox had twisted her arm, forcing her to her knees on the scorching April pavement. Sean Becker had pulled Malik out of her sight, and Knox even smashed the boy's phone when he saw him trying to record the scene. "We're detaining you on suspicion of vehicle theft," Knox had said through clenched teeth, like he was mocking her. No one asked her name. No one checked her ID. No one let her speak to her son. Now, in this windowless room, all Naomi could hear was the soft hum of the air conditioning and the thunder of her own heartbeat. The surveillance camera blinked lazily on the wall, as if even it had grown bored of witnessing injustice unfold inside this place. Then the door swung open. Sheriff Ray Duggan walked in, a large man with a sunburnt face, tight buzz cut, and stomach that pushed against his belt buckle. Duggan looked every bit the Southern father figure. If you didn't know that he built an entire police empire on fear, silence, and a growing list of black names labeled easily handled. "Miss Carter," Duggan said, his voice low, equal parts friendly and venomous, like a snake that knows how to smile. "We'll let you make a call. But first," he set a folder down on the table. Naomi's face went pale. Inside was a photo of her son, Malik, being led away by a Child Protective Services officer. "The child has been relocated," Duggan said slowly. "You're now a criminal suspect, and he has no legal guardian. We found narcotics in your purse," he added, emphasizing each word. "We'll search for weapons next." No, I don't have anything." Naomi almost shouted. "I'm a nurse. I just stopped for gas." "You should stop talking before this gets worse." Duggan cut her off, nodding for Knox and Becker to escort her out. "Around here, Miss Carter," he added as she was dragged from the chair, "whoever holds a gun gets to speak." Naomi was yanked to her feet, her eyes still locked on the photo of Malik lying on the table. Her heart pounded like it might burst from her chest. A deep, crushing sense of helplessness washed over her, but from within that darkness, a spark ignited. If I don't fight, who will? Somewhere out there, her son was alone, facing a world that had just shown its ugliest face. And she knew, to protect him, she could not afford to fall. Down the dim corridor of the Halston Police Department Detention Center, Naomi Carter leaned against a cold concrete wall, wrists still raw from the cuffs. Every breath she took felt heavier, not just from the stale air, but from the weight of one unrelenting thought. Whereas Malik? Naomi closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe steadily. In the pitch-black isolation cell, she repeated the same phrase like a mantra. Malik called Damien. "It's going to be okay. Damien will come." Lieutenant Colonel Damien Carter, commander of Delta Force, was in the middle of a training exercise at Fort Bragg when he got the call from his nephew, Malik. The boy's trembling voice over the line made it impossible for Damien to sit still. He immediately contacted his team and began planning his return to rescue his sister Naomi. Damien knew that Sheriff Ray Duggan wasn't just a corrupt lawman. He had deep ties to organized crime, and Damien had made his choice. He would use every skill and tactic he had to expose the truth. The moment his plane touched down, Carter Reed, his most trusted aide, was already waiting at the terminal with an update. "She's in solitary confinement in Halston," Reed reported. "No one's been able to reach her. The charges are being pushed through directly by Sheriff Ray Duggan. He's blocked every legal channel. As for Malik, he's being held illegally at Langley Children's Center." Damien clenched his fists. The anger didn't come out as shouting. It came out in footsteps, faster and harder with every stride. He'd faced drug lords in South America, breached terrorist compounds in the Middle East, but he had never fought a battlefield like this one. His own home. "Activate Independent Operations Unit." He ordered. "We go by the book. Intel infiltration extract and dismantle the system from within. I want every piece of evidence Duggan ever buried pulled into the light." Reed nodded. "And Naomi?" Damien turned toward the satellite display, glowing on the glass screen. A digital map zeroed in on the Halston Police Department, a cold gray block of a building, as lifeless as the soul of the town it controlled. "We're bringing her home, whatever it takes." Under the dim yellow light of a makeshift tactical room, set up in a rented suburban house, Damien Carter stood at the center like a general in a war zone. Behind him, a large screen displayed a full topographical layout of Halston. Every road, traffic cam, utility grid, the police department, and local courthouse highlighted with precision. Around him stood his elite team of 4. Reggie Miles, surveillance specialist. Dana Vo, financial operations analyst. Troy Navarro, terrain scout and logistics. Ayanna Blake, veteran hacker and cyber intelligence expert. They built a full-blown system to cover their tracks, Ayanna said, fingers dancing across her keyboard as she decrypted a flood of locked files. Wrongful arrests, falsified reports, and even money funneled through shell nonprofits. All roads lead back to Ray Duggan. Damien nodded. "I want the names of everyone who signed off on those files. Anyone who helped Duggan pull this off. I want to know who they are." Dana pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose and pulled up her report. Duggan didn't just plant drugs in Naomi's car. He's been laundering money using asset forfeiture funds. Over $1.2 million was siphoned from the community protection budget and funneled into fake construction companies. Every trail leads to accounts held by relatives of his. Reggie tapped the screen, displaying a live feed from Naomi's holding cell. She's still in solitary. No lawyer. No contact. And her son, Malik. He's being held at the city's child welfare center. There's no legal documentation approving that detainment. Damien clenched his fist, his eyes locked on the screen, as if he could reach through it and drag Duggan into the light. "We're not just rescuing Naomi. We're taking this entire network down." Troy spoke up. "I've got something else." Some of the cops are starting to waver. I intercepted a conversation between an officer and his brother. They know the Naomi case is wrong, but they're afraid Duggan will retaliate. Damien turned sharply. "Good. We'll show them there's a stronger force behind them now. Tonight, we move on 3 fronts. Ayanna, you breach their internal system. Extract every shred of data. Dana, coordinate with the IRS to track the money trail. Reggie, Troy, you're with me. We're going to find a former witness Duggan wrongfully arrested. He's been in hiding, but he's the missing piece." Ayanna looked up, eyes serious. "Are you sure? If we expose this whole system, it won't stop with Halston. Duggan's tied to political chains that reach far beyond this town. This won't be just a personal mission anymore." Damien looked around the room, at the people who had chosen to risk their careers and their lives for this fight. "I know," he said, his voice low but resolute. "But the moment they went after my sister and my nephew, they declared war. And I've never lost a war in my life." Suddenly, Reggie's voice cracked through the room, alarmed. "Something's wrong. Naomi's last GPS ping shows she was moved from the detention center. Then nothing. The signal vanished. Damien's jaw tightened. He thought Naomi would be safe after the call went up the Pentagon chain. But that was just the beginning. A second shock followed immediately. Dana, monitoring intel from a Halston network, turned from her screen. "We've got a spike." A coded message just went out from Duggan's office, sent to an unidentified contact. Content reads, "Identity confirmed. Brothers Delta. Situation critical. Clean up. No traces." Damien spun around. "How the hell does he know who I am?" Dana pulled up the metadata logs fast. Looks like during Naomi's arrest, a witness at the gas station was live streaming. Someone shouted, "That's Damien Carter's sister, the Delta Force commander." The video spread like wildfire in the community before the cops tried scrubbing it, but they weren't fast enough. A local YouTube channel archived it and sent it to several human rights organizations. That's how it leaked. Reggie added quietly, "And now Duggan's scared. Because if your sister survives, and this gets out, his whole empire collapses." Damien nodded, his voice low and commanding, like an order issued on the battlefield. Sheriff Ray Duggan just realized he picked the wrong fight, and now he's panicking. He wants to disappear Naomi and Malik. That's how he cleans up. But he forgot one thing: I never come alone. On the large screen, Naomi's last known location was marked. Not far from there stood an abandoned warehouse near an old freight route, a perfect place to deal with someone with no witnesses. Damien turned to his team. "Rally up. We execute twin blade formation. One assault unit, one cover unit. No casualties, unless absolutely necessary." Everyone nodded. No questions needed. And just as Damien's intel predicted, across town, Sheriff Duggan, now aware that Naomi's younger brother, Lieutenant Colonel Damien Carter, had returned and was tightening the noose, began to unravel. He knew that once elite forces got involved, every secret, the forged reports, planted evidence, unsolved deaths, would be dragged into daylight. In desperation, Duggan summoned a mercenary unit led by a ruthless commander named Mercer, issuing a single directive: don't let them reach a courtroom. Don't let them talk. Take them to Warehouse 12 on the outskirts. Clean sweep before sunrise. The order went into effect before midnight. Naomi was transported in silence, her eyes blindfolded, wrists bound behind her back. Inside a crude transport van, she could hear the muffled sobs of Malik coming from the cargo hold next to hers. In the shadows of a decrepit warehouse on Halston's outskirts, Naomi and Malik were tied tightly, fear in their eyes as they faced the armed men sent to silence them forever. Mercer, standing before them, barked cold orders: "No noise. Clean and quick. No trace." But outside the building, the darkness cloaked another force, sharper, quieter, and deadlier. Damien was there, though battered and bruised. Naomi held her gaze high, unbroken. Malik, his voice trembling, whispered the words his mother had taught him: "Never bow your head when you know you're right." At exactly 3 a.m., the assault team approached the warehouse silently. Using night vision and suppressed rifles, they neutralized the outer guards in seconds. A crisp, concise command echoed through comms: "Team 1 left, Team 2 right. No one leaves." Damien Carter emerged like a shadow in the night. Fully equipped, he moved like liquid, silent, deliberate, lethal. Inside, Mercer sensed something was wrong. He drew his weapon, turning toward Naomi, but a single shot rang out. A sniper's round, fired through the warehouse window by an FBI agent stationed outside, dropped Mercer instantly. Then the breach began. The assault team flooded in, clearing the room, taking down the rest of the mercenaries with surgical precision. Damien rushed forward, cutting Naomi's bindings and pulling her into his arms. "I'm here, sis," he said, voice catching in his throat. Naomi held her son tightly, tears falling in silence. Malik, trembling, clutched her hand, his eyes still burning with life. "We're still alive," Naomi whispered. "Not just alive," Damien replied, his gaze fixed on the flashing lights of the incoming FBI vehicles. "We're standing up, and this time, the world's going to hear us." Once Naomi and Malik were secured, Damien, the FBI agents, and the strike team swept the warehouse for evidence, gathering documents and communication gear that directly linked Sheriff Ray Duggan to the mercenary operation. Near the command table, in an abandoned steel briefcase, they discovered a thick dossier, a list of names, each one marked for silencing or disappearance. Naomi Carter and her son Malik were only two of them. Damien and the FBI wasted no time. With evidence in hand, from mercenary contracts, illicit financial transactions, to decrypted internal messages, they convened an emergency press conference at the federal building. Statewide media outlets filled the room. Damien stepped up to the podium, not as a soldier this time, but as a brother, as a citizen demanding justice. The system in Halston wasn't just broken, it was built to be broken. We're dismantling it, brick by brick. Under overwhelming public pressure and the mountain of irrefutable evidence, Sheriff Ray Duggan, Deputy Travis Knox, and Deputy Sean Becker were all formally indicted and brought to trial in Georgia's federal court. Beneath the harsh, sterile lights of the federal courtroom, the trial of Duggan, Knox, and Becker commenced. Hundreds of Halston residents had lined up since dawn, eager to witness the moment when justice would finally step into the light. The courtroom was packed with journalists, national broadcasters, and human rights organizations, transforming the trial into a focal point of national reckoning. Naomi Carter entered the court in a deep navy blue suit. Her posture was upright, her stride composed, but her eyes burned with memory of pain and a resolve forged in fire. Damien sat in the front row behind her, his steady gaze offering silent protection. The prosecution opened with a chilling narrative, a web of corruption spun by Duggan, a trail of unlawful arrests ordered by Knox, and Becker's silent complicity in every step. They played interrogation recordings, submitted copies of transferred officers' complaints, and presented financial records exposing bribery, fraud, and orchestrated entrapments. Then, the room held its collective breath as Naomi Carter took the stand. I'm a nurse at Halston Memorial Hospital. I work 12-hour shifts. That night, I just wanted to stop for gas, let my son grab a snack, and go home. But because of my skin color, I was arrested. I was beaten. I was silenced. They didn't need a reason. They just needed power. Naomi's voice didn't tremble, but her words cut through the silence like a scalpel. She recounted everything in chilling detail, from being pulled over without cause, to being slammed against her car, to hearing her son's phone, their only chance of proof, shattered against the pavement. Each word landed like a blade in the minds of the jury. Every sentence a wound reopened, every memory an indictment. And throughout it all, Travis Knox had been the hand delivering the abuse, while Sean Becker stood by, sometimes laughing, always silent. Travis Knox sat at the defendant's table, sweat beading across his brow, his jaw clenched, trying to appear composed, but his fingers twitched with every word Naomi spoke. Sean Becker, by contrast, showed a different response. He kept his head down, hands clenched on his knees, unable to meet Naomi's eyes. Then came the breaking point. The prosecution revealed a never-before-seen piece of evidence, a recovered security footage from the gas station, which the police department had attempted to erase. The video played. It showed Becker turning his back while Knox struck Naomi. He didn't stop it. He hesitated. He was afraid. And then he walked away. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled. Some members of the public burst into tears. Becker stood abruptly, unable to bear the weight any longer. I want to cooperate with the federal government, he blurted. I have proof. The orders came from Duggan. Anyone who opposed him got reassigned or disappeared. I kept copies of the directives. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Knox. The whole system, it's rotten to the core. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge immediately called a 30-minute recess to verify Becker's claims. When court resumed, Sean Becker formally signed a witness protection agreement and became the key to unlocking the entire criminal enterprise. Over the next 3 days, The court heard testimony from dozens of former victims and a detailed confession from Becker. The verdicts came swiftly. Travis Knox was convicted on 17 counts, including assault, abuse of authority, and civil rights violations. Sheriff Ray Duggan, the man behind it all, was found guilty of over 30 federal charges, including conspiracy to kidnap, high-level corruption, and orchestrating witness tampering. Naomi Carter stepped out of the courthouse, her hands still trembling, but her eyes blazing. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a woman who made an entire system bow its head. And for the first time in years, Halston no longer lived under the shadow of unchecked power. 7 months later, the soft light of autumn poured over Halston's central square as Naomi Carter stepped onto a temporary podium erected outside City Hall. The American flag fluttered behind her in the wind. Before her stood hundreds, people of every color, class, and profession, watching closely as a woman who had become the living symbol of justice took the stage. 7 months ago, Naomi had been an unknown nurse, handcuffed on a sidewalk because of her skin and an old car. Today, she was no longer a victim. She was the founder of the Carter Justice Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to providing legal support for victims of police abuse and pushing for institutional reform from the ground up. We cannot just tear down a system, she began, voice clear and commanding, without building something better in its place. We don't just demand justice for the hurt. We give them power to rise, to say, I deserve to be respected. Applause rolled like waves across the plaza. But Naomi wasn't done. She looked toward the back row, where Malik stood next to his uncle, Damian Carter. The boy smiled, eyes gleaming with pride. After the trial of Travis Knox, Naomi's name echoed far beyond Halston's borders. She was invited to speak at police academies, state congressional hearings, and legal forums. But for her, the spotlight wasn't what mattered most. What mattered were the quiet things happening behind the scenes. The office of the Carter Justice Initiative sat on a modest but warm corner building on Jefferson Street, once the law office of a retired prosecutor. Now, it processed hundreds of cases each month, mostly from the poor, people of color, and those fighting the justice system alone. Naomi didn't work alone. She recruited honest former officers, young lawyers hungry for reform, and even those who had once been wrongfully arrested, living proof of a system that needed rebuilding. And one person above all continued to stand beside her silently, her brother, Damian. Halston seemed peaceful again, at least on the surface. But Damian knew better. Ghosts of the past don't vanish so easily. The name Ray Duggan may have been scrubbed off the sheriff's office wall, but the scars he left on the community ran deep and still raw. You don't have to stay here forever, Naomi said softly as she stepped down from the podium, walking toward Damian, holding 2 sweet teas in hand. You don't have to carry this weight anymore. Damian took the tea. I know, but it's not a weight. It's a promise. Years ago, he had left this town with a vow. If something ever happened, he'd come back. And when Naomi's call for help pierced through layers of classified missions and distant battlefields, Damian knew he had to keep that vow, not with weapons, but with presence. A brother, a soldier, a silent but unshakable anchor. By day, he helped Naomi build a security infrastructure for the Carter Justice Initiative. By night, he reviewed the files still unresolved. Cases of wrongful arrests, abuses of power, stories left to rot in silence. He didn't want to be tied down, but he stayed, through volunteer patrols, backroom reform meetings, and quiet glances from former officers who still missed their old power. One late afternoon, as Malik practiced basketball in the backyard, Damian sat under the porch roof with Naomi, working on an old radio set, a gift for the newly reformed police station. Naomi was silent for a while, then said quietly, Malik told me yesterday. He sleeps easier now, knowing his uncle is here. Damian just nodded. He didn't need medals, didn't want parades. He only needed one thing, to know that if anything ever went wrong in Halston again, he would be the first to know, and the last one standing. Because sometimes, not all heroes carry rifles on battlefields, but rather those who quietly stand watch at the doorways of this town, to make sure justice never falls asleep again. The spring afternoon in Halston was as gentle as the atmosphere inside the Carter Community Center, a place that was once a rotting warehouse, now reborn in the colors of hope and accountability. In a small second-floor conference room, an old oak table sat at the center, surrounded by familiar faces. Faces of those who had helped rewrite the history of this town. Naomi Carter sat at the head of the table, no longer in a formal blazer, but in a plain button-down shirt, hair tied neatly at the nape of her neck. Before her sat the Q3 operations plan for the Carter Justice Initiative, but her eyes didn't rest on paper. They rested on each person in the room. None of you were born to be activists, Naomi began, her voice low but warm. We were pushed by circumstance and chose not to back down. Damian Carter leaned back in his chair, arms folded, silent. He didn't need to speak. His presence at every meeting was its own quiet vow that this center wasn't just a project. It was a front line, one he was ready to defend to the very end. Near the window, Malik flipped through a sketchbook filled with faces he'd drawn. A girl once jailed for a misfine. An old man who reclaimed his home after a wrongful conviction. Each page, a thread of justice sewn back into place with courage. We've processed 27 cases this quarter, reported Denise, the center's legal advisor. 8 had their records expunged thanks to new evidence. And 3 former officers have reached out. They want to help train the next class on ethics. Naomi nodded slowly. We can't change the whole system overnight. But every case, every life, that's another brick laid down right. When the meeting ended, no one rushed out. Someone made tea. Someone put on music. Malik quietly opened his guitar case and began playing Lean on Me. His chords clumsy but honest. The 13-year-old boy who once cried under red and blue police lights now strummed peace into the room, a song for his mother. Each note seemed to chip away at the chains of the past. There was no applause, only silence, but it was the kind that meant everything. Naomi looked up through the skylight, toward a sky, so clear it felt like breathing after a storm. And in that moment, she knew Halston had truly turned a page, not by miracle, but by faith, by courage, and by a community that refuses to stop believing.